Hello, and welcome, listeners, to today's episode of Critical Weight Theory, where I'll delve into a phrase often found at the end of scientific research: further studies are needed. The phrase pops up across academic fields, from medical research to environmental science. It's a cliche, and some people roll their eyes when they hear it, but there's also something refreshing about it, to the casual observer, because if somebody admits that further research is needed for something, it at least shows that maybe they have some humility. There's somebody who doesn't pretend to know everything, and that can be a good thing, of course. But what does it really mean, and why is it so prevalent? So today we'll explore why studies often end with this suggestion, the implications for our understanding of knowledge, and how this might shape your perception of learning and growth in your own life if you apply it sort of as a possible option for conclusions that you reach. So, what does further studies are needed really mean? Of course, it can mean different things to different people in various contexts, but if you break down the meaning, it can be a sign of uncertainty, a plea for more funding, in the academic sense, when a scientific study is like saying, oh, we just need more money to come in. Or it can be a cautious approach to declaring finality. And let's face it, sometimes it can also be employed cynically as a tool of sophistry. A person might say something totally outlandish, something that's not supported by science, and then they'll say, well, I'll admit I don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. Further research is needed, but here's what I read on Facebook on a meme or something like that. So it can be used and abused. And the phrase can reflect the inherent limitations of a single study. No research can cover all possible variables, contexts, or outcomes, so suggesting further study is a way of acknowledging that knowledge is always expanding, and that sort of thing. So it's part of the nature of science and knowledge. It's rarely about definitive answers, but rather a continuous process of discovery. So why do researchers say that so often? Well, the reasons researchers say it is a complex thing. It can signal intellectual humility, scientists acknowledging that they don't know everything and that future work will provide more clarity, and it can tie into the idea of progress in science, which can be a good thing. You know, I don't want to say all scientific advancement is good, but I also don't want to be totally in a Ted Kaczynski like direction either. So each study builds on the previous one, leading to more nuanced understanding over time. That's really how it's supposed to work. And the interesting thing about that is you might be able to relate it to your own experience. You know, dear listener, even if you're not a scientific researcher or in academia at all. So, how often do we stop short of making firm conclusions in our own lives, opting to leave room for more explanation and exploration and growth? So, sometimes it pays to admit that you need to find more details out. You don't have all the pieces of the puzzle and all that kind of stuff. So, is this phrase just a safety net? While it's often used for valid reasons, the phrase can sometimes be a safety net, allowing researchers to avoid making bold claims that might be easily debunked. Maybe they sometimes say it when they don't even have to, again, as just a way to bolster the desire for more funding. And it can be a tactic to receive further funding, of course, particularly in fields where ongoing research keeps institutions afloat. So that's why some people in the science world will roll their eyes, and they believe that further research is needed is such a cliche, and it's sort of like litter that you find on the sidewalk. Nobody really wants it there, but it's going to appear a lot. You're gonna see it from time to time. But again, there are some positive aspects to it. Putting all that aside, and really, the safety net mentality might be mirrored in everyday decision making too. Do we hedge our bets and avoid making strong claims when we're unsure or when there's a fear of being wrong? I think we do a lot of the time. There's definitely something safe about just saying I don't know. It's usually better to be honest in a situation like that than pretending that you're more knowledgeable than you are. Well, I shouldn't say usually. It pretty much always is better. And I think society can find that out when it comes to the experts or the supposed experts that we sometimes elevate who really have no true qualifications. And I'll leave you guess who I might be talking about there. Could be a lot of different people, of course, and I'm sure it is. But there are definitely some obvious people that I could be addressing with that sort of comment. So there's also the philosophy of never-ending learning. Of course, we all stop learning when we die, presumably. Unless you believe in reincarnation or I guess the afterlife. Maybe you're learning new stuff up in heaven when you die. I'm an atheist, so I'm skeptical about that one. But nevertheless, as far as anybody knows, we stop learning at a certain point, but while we live and are capable of learning, sure enough, we're bound to acquire new information over time. And there's a philosophical turn here that we can take. Does the idea of further studies are needed parallel how we live our lives? Are we ever truly done learning, growing, or understanding? And hey, here's a little bit of a curveball. Should we ever be done learning and understanding new things? Like, hypothetically, could there be a point where we say, all right, I've learned enough, I've done enough, I'm just going to ride it out for the rest of my life. I'm sure that's what a lot of retired people want to do, you know, and life ends up just being, I guess, the same day recycled over and over again, and presumably they're either going to be comfortable with that or miserable with it. But conventionally speaking, even these people are still learning new things. So that's part of the philosophy of never-ending learning. So you know there's always room for further study that can help us stay curious and adaptive. And hopefully, as everyone out there gets older, they do have that healthy drive to learn more information, and it's actually quality information instead of outright garbage. And it's reassuring that some people out there are taking full advantage of what society has to offer in that regard. So this can relate back to your lives, listeners. You can view every experience as part of your own research. Life is an ongoing process where there's always more to learn and understand. So yeah, I'm basically going to wind this episode down by posing this question to you. In your life, where do you feel the need for further study? Whether it's in your personal relationships, career development, or even understanding yourself, this mindset is, it's a continuous inquiry that can be applied to many areas. So, for example, you could learn a new skill, explore new interests, dig deeper into topics that feel unresolved and that you would like a conclusion to. You know, so further studies are needed is more than a phrase used by researchers. It's actually a mindset that embraces the idea that there's always more to learn.